yesterday evening that I've been hashing out with trying to build my continental height maps in a way sort of similar to the way Plate Tectonics works. So this is just a quick Gampa-doodle of kind of what's going on in that. So you have like a subduction zone, and then you have it going under here, and then this will have like a wrinkle that will form mountain ridges usually close to the subduction zones, and then it'll kind of go up to a bulge in the middle and then go back down and either go into another subduction zone or do the reverse. So there's actually a few different patterns. You could have dupe, right? You could also have, I forget what they're called, but the zones where it's spreading apart, where you may have like a basin and then kind of some wriggly ridges, and then another basin where they're moving apart. But, excuse me, I'm still sick, although it is getting better. But, for my purposes, I think trying to do all of them is too much. So what I want to do is just try to get this pattern right here in the middle. Subduction zone, ridge, bulge, fall off. And I was thinking about how to do that with noise. And I think I came up with how to do it. So for instance here, you'll see that we have continental fall off on this side and a ridge on this side, right? Likewise, fall off this side, ridges on this side, ridges on this side, fall off on this side. So how am I doing that? Well, let's take a look at a couple different functions here. So I have my first noise that I'm using to pick out the continent fault lines themselves. And this is run through a billow ridge noise filter that I wrote. And you can kind of see these cracks and patterns here. Let's do a mask. Alright, so this can get us sort of some like subduction zone ridge-like textures. And this is just a noise with distortion, some amount of distortion strength, scaled up pretty large, and then ran through this billow ridge noise filter that I wrote, which is just this. We basically subtract 0.5 from it, multiply by 2. You could also multiply by 2 minus 1. Either way is the same. Then you absolute value, subtract by 0.5, multiply by a coefficient. This is what allows us to flip it between billow and ridge. If we put in a negative 1 here, we would get ridge noise. With a positive 1, we get billow noise. And then add the 0.5 back. Alright, so wrong one. This is the one that I was working on. Okay, so this gives us something that looks kind of like subduction zones. Now the problem is, if I want to create ridges that are relative to this, how can I do that, right? Like, how can I create a ridge that takes this into account, but will also mix with this? And the issue here, if we take a look, is that well, you're actually not going to be able to see it. So we'll just turn this to 0 for now. The issue here is that our ridge billow noise filter, they're inverses of each other. So like, if I have this, and I want the ridge noise version, and you can't see it very well at 8 power, but at 32 power, or maybe 64, maybe 128, yeah. So let's take a look at this one. Wait, the fuck? Oh, I see. just plug them both into the same offset here. That's kind of a clue to how I did it. So let's go start previewing here. All right, so the issue here is that these are inverse of each other. You can see that pretty clearly now. That means that combining them as is kind of a no-go, because they would just cancel each other out. But we want to still take into account the overall shape of this when we're figuring out our ridges. And we also only want our ridges to fall on one side or the other of these fault lines, because one side would be subducting and going under, and the other side would be getting pushed up. So I really spent a lot of time thinking about how to do that, and I think what I landed on, it actually works pretty good. So let's go ahead and stop previewing this node. All right, so this is completely eliminated our mountain layer here. Let's put this back to like 0.05, 0.04, and then plug this into our second noise offset. So now what we can do is we can basically use the same noise parameters for the most part, same scale, same distortion strength, but we can take the offset that's being fed into this noise, take its inverse, and then multiply it by some small scalar to basically create these ridges. And hang on, let's put it back to 8, 16, 32. All right, that might be a bit much. Let's do 8. 8 looks pretty good to me. To basically shift the second noise function, the one with our ridge noise, slightly in the opposite direction that we're shifting the original noise. And that can push everything off center, but not on one side or the other, right? Like we just talked about, like one side is going down, one side is going up. So this will shift the noise a little bit away from the center of where the other noise is to one side or the other for all the noise. So that allows us to get these kind of like, I have upwelling here and then fade off here. I have, upwelling here and then it's going to fade off over on this side, right? Like we're fading to nothing here. We have mountains over here. This would be closer to a ridge, and this would be closer to like a subduction zone ridge, right? So the last thing left, so I think that's kind of cracked that issue. Like we have, this is good for like the fault line ridges. There's, however, and then the last thing that we're doing is we're creating one more layer of smaller noise here. And we're taking our mountain layer and multiplying it with this noise to basically create this kind of fractured, because this is a really low frequency. So we can create another ridge noise here at a higher frequency. Right. And we can use this one to modify our ridge line that we calculated for the continent. And then we can take our, I'm not sure this part's needed. Let's see. Yeah, I actually like it better like this, I think. we can take our final output of this. And these masks are going to go away eventually, but so then what can we do? We can we can take our height map that we've modified based on a sea level here. So if I set it to 0, we just purely see the fault lines, the ridges, and the subduction zones, right? So I can take my land height map that's been parsed through the sea level and I can take this mountain layer that we built and we can multiply that to cut off the mountains that would occur like under the oceans, because we don't really need those. Finally, we can take the result here, apply some multiplier to basically control the height of the mountains that we're adding. Right? Changes the intensity, basically. And this becomes our final land height map. Or not final, but... And let's go unlit. For previewing height maps, it's better to go in unlit. This shit glows like the sun. Alright, so that gets us these nice ridges on one side and fall off on the other side. So that's great. That's like 3/4 of the way there. The last thing I have left is that there's also another type of upwelling that happens closer to the center of the plate. And I think the way I'm thinking about doing that is, what if I took this and I just multiplied it with its other channels? And we may also have to run it through a power node, perhaps. No, fucker. And now, hopefully, we multiply this by our mountain modifier as well. Then we multiply it by another scalar. And we add this in as well. Unfortunately, that would appear to be just overlapping what's already there. Well, no, not really. Yeah. So that's not going to work. We have to come up with something else. What if I send in only the red? So the challenge is that the mountains are already forming in the highest parts of the red channel of our billow noise. How can we make that work? Could I possibly spread the inverse function, perhaps? What if I subtract the mountain noise from this? No, that doesn't work. What if I take, okay, idea. We just take the inverse. The inverse of the height map times the inverse of the mask. That might actually be working. Oh, dirt. The other way might have worked too, actually. Because I was multiplying by the post-multiplied mountains. Am I in negative domain? Oh yeah, I am in negative domain because I'm subtracting here. We have to clamp. There we go. And now we get a bit of upwelling in the center, hopefully. Let's set sea level to 0. Get rid of some of this stuff. We'll leave that component mask because I might need one. We get these nice ridges. And then this number here basically adjusts how close the ridge gets to the shore, or to the fault line. If you look at the white and sandy lines is the fault lines. Sort of had it on before. Alright, so now So the nice thing about this is before I was having to combine a mountain layer and the continent layer and a variance layer to do this. Doing it this way, I still have to have the additional sample, but it gets incorporated into the continent, and this is entirely output as a single height map instead of having to combine multiple height maps at the end. And that means that we'll be able to use this to also hopefully manipulate the river layer. And we finally have like these nice windy mountain ranges that almost look like they make sense instead of just random mountains splatted all over the planet. So I quite like that. There's one other thing that we should probably test. So if I do this, we get our full complement as if it was the mask. Right, so now we have our upwellings. Shore ridges and everything in our base height map. Yeah, I think this is going to be better. And then we can take the output of that and now our mountain changes actually have an impact on the area. The only problem is that it's not super well normalized here, and that's probably yeah, now you get this nice archipelago legio or whatever. Can't pronounce it. Shoreline fall off. like the mountain ridges have an impact on the like island formation, sort of like how it would work in real life. The only problem is that it's not like properly balanced around. It's not properly balanced around 0.5. Like we want all this to kind of be centered around 0.5, so that a 0.5 sea level would be roughly 50% underwater, 50% above water, but we're at like a 0.1 sea level right now. Man, fuck. Hang on, I'm doing stuff. What the fuck, man? Log me out again. Some bullshit. This in. There we go. Okay. I think this is quite nice. Let's try it with this. To me, that's starting to look pretty good. Let's do Scala for our temperature control here. Set a nice 0.5. I think this is the way. I think this is the way to do it. So this covers our mountains and our continents. That means that the only other thing we have to do in addition to this is a layer for rivers for erosion. We gotta fake that. Quite like the fact that like the ridges like extend out into the ocean doing it like this. but I don't like the fact that my values are not balanced correctly. So let's get rid of all the masks here. Alright, this right here is our distortion. We pretty much cracked this, I think. 2 layers of distortion seem to be about right. Good balance of performance and appearance. These values are probably fine. This is with none of the mountains, full mountains, even more. What I really like about this is you get these wonderful ridges of mountain ranges that look like something you'd find on Earth. That's kind of what I was trying to get. Alright, so now, what's my output here? Is it still RBG? Okay, great. That's what we want. Add a mask at the very end before we pass it in here. And that's fine. But we want to maintain as much value as possible because you could do a different deal just by just boop boop. Now you have a different boop boop. But in general, we use the red channel because it's larger, more contiguous blobs. And we're trying to build continents. So I think that just about covers it for the mountains. I need to clean this up and get it in a function, perhaps, or get it in the other master material. So let's see. This can be a constant, this can be a constant. divided by, we need to divide I think that's how this works. Leave it as add for the moment. Send this back down to 0.5. Where'd my water bottle go? There it is. Some islands are formed by just the base continent height. Some islands are formed by the mountain ridges, and you can tell it's kind of cool because the stuff formed by the mountain ridges is actually rougher. And its borders than the stuff formed by the base continent height, which is cool. I think what I'm going to want to do is combine the mountain levels beforehand and then multiply them by universal multiplier, and then I can scale it consistently into the right range, perhaps. I'm not sure about this function either. Yeah, I'm gonna probably want to redo this function. We're just gonna leave it at 0 contribution for the moment, because I think the ridge noise looks really good. This stuff. But I want to come up with some other way to kind of push up some other areas. I'm just going to leave it on this one because it's a little bit easier. This is just a blah, 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 blah. Can't talk. It's just a test gradient. The colors are obviously too garish to actually use, but it's useful for visualization purposes in the same way that like the height map lookup gizmo texture is useful. This one. Doesn't matter for this texture, there's no temperature. Also, we put the unclamped value into here, right? No. It was correct. No, not like that. Like this. There we go. All right. How do I do the output? All right, so the current problem is it's not balanced in the right range. Like this is not 50% sea level, right? It's probably about double. Like this is closer to 50% sea level, and it's probably still not. So it's probably more like triple even to hit 50% sea level. Skalala. I don't like having to control this in a different way than the other way. That's not too bad, actually. Still needs work. Okay, I actually have a couple things that I need to do, so I'm gonna hop off for now. I'll probably keep fucking with this and come back when I